Hey there, it's Will Vaughan from Your Career Mastery, and in this video, I want to share with you one of the worst ever job interviews that I ever sat through currently in my career. So just for context, I'm about 4 roles into my career, which is almost hitting about a decade of experience in the corporate world. And for each of the jobs I've had, I've sat through a number of job interviews. But when I look back over my time sitting in different job interviews, whether they were in person, pre-COVID, or taken remotely, only a handful of job interviews that really stand out as taking the cake in terms of job interviews that were absolutely awful for whatever reason. And in this video, I'm going to break down probably 1 or 2 of the worst job interviews that I ever sat in. So this first one comes to mind. And so this was a job interview that I sat in for my last role, not my current role, but the last role that I was in. I remember it was a very hot day in summer. It was probably about February here in Australia. I think it was back in about 2018 for my last role. And it was on, let's say, like a Wednesday. And I had 2 job interviews that day. I had one early in the morning and another job interview in the afternoon. And I actually gave her a lot of pushback about attending the second interview. And I told them, quite frankly, I've got another job interview in the morning. It's going to be very tight time-wise for me to get to this first interview, sit in it, and then get up and drive to this other job interview, which was on the other side of town, find a car park and attend the job interview. I would prefer to do it, if I could, on another day. They were absolutely adamant about me attending the job interview on that particular day because the director was going to be flying interstate in a couple of days and wouldn't get the chance to meet me otherwise. So I sucked it up. I said, all right, let's do the job interview. And I had my first one for a different company in the morning, which was my second round job interview at the company that I actually ended up getting the job with. So that was a second round interview for a cultural fit. Interview went really well, and then I had to get in my car and race off to this other job interview. And by this time, my adrenaline was running. I'd been nervous for the first interview. I was absolutely beaten, exhausted. It was hot. I drove an old car at the time, had to find a car park in a suburb in Melbourne called Richmond, which has tiny back streets. And I drove a big wagon at the time. Actually, I still drive it. Finding a car park was an absolute nightmare, but I finally did find one. Then I had to walk, sweaty, hot, nervous, to this other job interview. Got there, composed myself, had some water, walked into the job interview. Now, as I recount it for you, it actually doesn't sound that bad, but when I got into the job interview, I sat in a sort of a boardroom with myself and 4 other people. There was the director who wanted to meet me, the HR lady, and 2 other people from their team who I got to meet by name. But the weirdest part about the job interview was that the director sat there going through my resume. That was all hunky-dory, completely normal. But the 3 other people in the job interview did not say a word the entire time. They literally sat there speechless, looking at me. When I got to ask questions, I would, of course, look at them, make eye contact, want to appear like a friendly, normal human being. And they would just sort of look at me and smile and then look away nervously because they didn't really want to be there. They didn't know what their role in the job interview was, or if they did, they didn't make it very clear. And so we went through this job interview about 30 to 40 minutes, and it was really just me talking to the director back and forth, him asking questions, me answering them, and the others just sort of sitting there quietly, not saying anything. Super weird. One of the weirdest vibes I've ever had in a job interview. And otherwise, I thought it went okay. But when I came out of the interview, I just got a weird feeling, got a weird vibe. Didn't think the job interview was going to work out. And lo and behold, I got a call the next day saying they didn't want to proceed with me as a candidate for the role, which I was actually super stoked about because, like I said, super weird feeling, super weird vibe. People just sort of sitting there mute like mannequins, do you know what I mean? Like in the store window. So weird. But like I said, the funniest thing was I knew that they felt weird too. So I really don't think that they'd prepared as a company or as a team to understand how they were going to run this job interview, or if that was their strategy. They need to seriously sit back and work on that because it was atrocious. And look, while we're on the topic of sharing job interview stories, I really want to be transparent because, you know, I share a lot of tips on this channel to improve your job interview skills and improve your resume and really just improve your skills as a corporate professional so that you can succeed and achieve your goals in your career. But it's important to acknowledge that we all make mistakes. Not every single job interview is going to go your way. You might nail a job interview. They might offer you the role, but you might not want to work with the company because it's a weird vibe and everyone sits there like mannequins and doesn't want to talk to you. Or you're just not a cultural fit, or you get a better offer. And likewise, you might be gunning for a role that you think you're a great fit for and that you really want to work for this company, but it doesn't work out. Look, these things happen no matter how qualified you are for a role. And one of the weirdest things that happens is that you can be overqualified for a role, right? How frustrating is that? I've seen it time and time again where someone might apply for a role, but they're too overqualified, and so they're not going to get hired, which is kind of one of the most staggering and frustrating things out there, but it's a reality and it does happen. But the other story I wanted to share was that before I got my current role, so now I currently work for a global multinational company based in the US, but I work in the Australian office. But while I was going through the process of interviewing for this current role, I was obviously talking to other companies and interviewing around as well. And I had one job interview that was on a Friday afternoon at about 4 o'clock, right before a long weekend. So right before a public holiday. And let's be honest, on a Friday, mentally, how many of us are firing on all cylinders, let alone before a long weekend? Most of us are trying to wrap stuff up for the week because we know either this week or the coming week is going to be a short one. So we got to get stuff done. So I was cramming work, mentally absolutely phased out, burned out, complete space cadet, right? And then I've got this first round job interview for a really cool company. It was like a tech company in the university recruitment startup sort of space. And I remember joining the call, and it was for a marketing role. And the lady was very fantastic, very switched on. And she said to me, look, we're really looking for someone who's a great storyteller, someone who can really tell a great story with the content marketing approach that we're trying to get off the ground with this role. Tell me about the story of your career. And that question just hit me out of left field, and I knew I was going to have to come up with something very creative. And unfortunately, I just did not have it in me that day to absolutely get it done and deliver on that question in the way that that lady really needed me to in order to be a good fit for the role. And now I was very prepared to answer a very standard question about tell me about yourself, tell me about your experience, walk me through your resume. Very totally prepared for that. And actually, it wouldn't have been a hard pivot to sell myself in the way that she'd asked for, to tell me about the story of my career and come up with a really creative answer. But on that day, at that time, on a Friday at 4 o'clock before a long weekend, my brain was sizzled, char-grilled, char-broiled, whatever you want to call it. I did not have it in me to deliver, and that's okay. That happens. You're going to make mistakes. You can't punish yourself too much. And even though I made it through that interview somehow, and then I even made it to a second round interview, and I thought I was a great cultural fit, and I was pretty sure I was actually going to get an offer for that role. It didn't work out, and actually they said it didn't work out at the time because I didn't have experience leading a team, which was true. But then I ended up getting the role that I've currently got, which is for a large multinational global company. Fantastic opportunity, and actually worked out for the best. So I really do think that if you're going through a rough patch in your recruitment phase, you're looking for a new job, like be patient and really hold strong to what you're going for, because it'll work out in the end. I absolutely guarantee you there's a company out there and a role that needs what you've got. Whatever it is that you've got to offer, someone out there needs it. So I'm Will Vaughan from Your Career Mastery. Hope you found this video helpful. I love trying to share experiences and fun little stories from my career. I think that it really paints probably a more human aspect to many of the tips I try to share on this channel. I'd love to hear your story about the worst interview you've ever sat through, whether it was your performance or the performance of the company interviewing you. Love to hear it. Leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.